Hi, it's Eva Cartman, and you're listening to the Dream Big podcast show, the place to go to learn, laugh, and grow. Today we welcome comic book writer Kelly Sue DeConnick. This is episode 86, Big Dreamers. You ready? It's time to dream big.
Welcome to the Dream Big podcast show. We're inspiring you to shoot for the moon, take aim and go. We bring to you amazing guests who truly love what they do. Every day they're living their dreams, and so can you. Dream big, take action to reach your goals. Are you pumped yet? It's showtime, let's rock and roll.
Welcome to the Dream Big podcast show. I am your host, Eva Cartman. And today, I'd like to start by telling you about a special gift we have for all you big dreamers. We created a super cool Dream Big journal that we want to ship to you. And get this, the front of the journal has an illustration of an astronaut in outer space. What is so amazing is that the journal is printed and personalized with your own face and name. So you'll see your face on the cover of this journal as an astronaut. Oh, and it's free. Parents, please go to dreambigpodcast.com to claim your free, personalized Dream Big journal while this offer is still available. You'll see a video of my mom and I showing our journals. Go to dreambigpodcast.com to get your free journal. Now, it's time for you all to enjoy our interview with Kelly Sue DeConnick. Kelly has been credited with drawing female readers back to comic books. She's the writer of many popular comic book series starring female characters, including most famously the Marvel imprint Captain Marvel. She writes passionately, both on and off the page, about feminism, female representation, and the need for more female comic book creators. As always, we have show notes at dreambigpodcast.com/86, where we will include links to Kelly's website and everything we discussed in the interview. Without further ado, here's our interview with Kelly Sue DeConnick. Let's roll the tape. Hi.
Hello.
How are you, Kelly?
I'm well. How are you?
We are good. We're so excited for this interview.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And Kelly, we read on your Wikipedia page that you grew up in a military family. Is that right?
I did. My dad was in the Air Force for 20 years.
I'm kind of curious if you can share a little bit about this experience.
Well, let's see. Because of what my dad did for a living, we moved around a lot. So I got to live in Germany and Japan and Texas and California and Nebraska and Ohio. And I was kind of all over the place. And I think it was, if you'd asked me then, I would have said that I didn't like it because it was hard to pick up and move my friend and leave my friends every couple of years. But as an adult, when I look back on the experience, I feel really good about it, actually, because I made a lot of friends all over the world. And I think living in all of those different places gave me a sense of perspective I might not have had if I'd grown up in one place. But I'm sure, I think there are pluses and minuses to every experience.
Do you have brothers and sisters that you traveled with?
No, just me. I'm an only child. My husband is too. So we have two kids ourselves. So we're flummoxed by the whole sibling experience. They're so different, but we raised them the same. I don't understand.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
They're coming from the same family. How could that be?
Yeah. Same with my sister and me. We grew up, but we just are super different.
Yeah, you're different people. How about that?
Yeah.
How could that be?
I know.
I know.
And I was wondering if you could share or if you have any advice for our little big dreamers who find themselves moving often because of their parents' career.
Oh, gosh. I think it's hard, and I think it's okay to feel whatever you need to feel about that. But try to understand that your parents are doing the best that they can, to provide for you, and that their job may mean moving. And so if that's the case, then I think it's easier these days with the internet to stay in touch with your friends from your previous location, and then really try to learn as much as you can about the culture of the new place. I think.
Great advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk a lot on our podcast on trying not to let things bother you that are out of your control. And I bet
That's so important.
Yeah.
You're so wise.
Yeah,
Do you know about the Stoic philosophers?
I do.
Yeah, so that's a thing we talk about in our house a lot too. And what we do an exercise where we'll draw a big circle, and then when we're finding our anxiety getting out of control, we'll draw that big circle, and then we'll sort the concerns that we have in our lives, and we'll write them either inside the circle or outside the circle. And inside the circle are things that you can control or things that are your business. And outside of the circle are things that you either can't control or it's not your business to do so. So like if you were to try to control someone else's behavior, that's really outside of your circle. And that's manipulating, right?
Those are the things that you just need to let go of and understand that you can only be focused on yourself, and changing yourself. By changing yourself, you will change your reality, and you're like a mirror to everything that's outside of you. And
we talk about that a lot. Yeah, we talk about that a lot, and we say that the only time that someone else's behavior is inside your circle is when it's putting someone in danger.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, you could be, we're going to be talking a lot about comic books today, but you could be probably a great teacher to parents in parenting courses. We discovered so much in that first question about you. Honestly, those are great practices, and thank you so much for sharing. We love practical tips because this show is for adults and kids.
I teach that exercise I use it with my children, and I teach it to adult students as well. I think, when you're a writer, somebody else's review of your work, that's outside your circle,
Yeah. And speaking of comic books, like my mom said before, do you have like any memory of the first time you got your hands on a comic book?
You know what? I don't. And that bums me out, because that's one of those things that a lot of my colleagues can remember their first comic. And I don't. Because I grew up on Air Force bases, and because comic books were so much a part of base culture, I remember them always being around. It would be sort of like, do you remember the first outfit you wore? No, I have no idea. I don't remember the first TV show I saw either, because, clothes and televisions have been around my entire life. But I do remember one trip when I was probably a bit younger than you. I was probably, if I had to guess, I was 7 or 8, and I was on a road trip with my grandparents. And, we didn't have iPads or anything back in the old days. And so when we'd stop at gas station, I'd get a book or a magazine or a comic book. And I do remember one comic that my grandparents bought me that was about, it was like a biographical comic. So it was nonfiction. It was a biographical comic about the gospel singer Andre Crouch. And I was stuck in a car. I read this thing like 12 times. And then I remember like cutting it apart and trying to draw some of the panels and stuff.
That's cool.
That's
Kelly,
cool.
Honestly, before we got to interview you, we were talking about it with Eva, that in our house we don't have that many comic books. And I grew up in Soviet Union. We didn't have that many comic books at all. And Eva is growing up not really reading comic books, but more like fiction books, right, Eva?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like, what would you say for those big dreamers who have not experienced comic books yet? What is the biggest fascination about the comic books, and why people prefer comic books, but not like, let's say, fiction books?
Well, so it's just another medium. So it's okay to like, all of the different mediums. So just because you like to watch television doesn't mean you don't like movies. And just because you love to read prose doesn't mean you can't also love to read comics. And any story that you could tell, or any genre that you could work in. So we sort of tend to think in this country, we tend to think of comic books as, we confuse them with the medium with the genre. So we think that comic books have to be superheroes because that's pretty dominant in the industry in this country. But that's not really the case at all. You can have comics tell any story. You could have comics that are fantasy, or you can have comics that are romance, or you can have comics that are crime, or you can have, you can have comics that are appropriate to kids, and you can have comics that are absolutely not appropriate for kids. It's just like any other storytelling medium, whether it's prose or film or TV. It's just another way to tell a story. But what is really cool about it is it's a way to tell a story that works on what we kind of refer to in when we work in this industry, we refer to it as it works on a third channel. So the words and the pictures work together so that you kind of animate the story in your mind.
And yeah, because you have a picture and then you have words coming.
Mm-hmm. And your brain does a lot of the work, and the reader controls the pace. So you can, when you're watching a TV show or you're watching a movie, you don't, you usually watch it straight through. Maybe if you're watching a show at home with your remote in your hand and you're distracted, you might go back to catch something you missed, but mostly you don't. The maker of the movie or the maker of the TV show tells you the pace at which you're going to consume it. And they also tell you where your eyes should look on the picture, right? Mm-hmm. But in comics, the reader controls all of that. And so most people, when you watch people read a comic, they go through it very slowly, taking everything in, and sometimes they'll flip back. And it's a kind of storytelling that shifts a lot of the control to the reader, and that makes it very special. It's also one of the oldest ways to tell a story. So
it's like a old like one of the oldest way, maybe like a movie, right? Like in a movie you see everything on the screen, but like on the paper it's like a movie, but in a little drawings.
Yeah, I mean, you could go back even further. You could go back to cave paintings. Cave paintings are comics. If you use two pictures in sequence to tell a story, and your brain has to make the leap of how we got from one picture to the other picture, that's a comic. So, there is literally as old as human beings. As long as we have been telling stories, we've been using comics.
Yeah, and I was wondering, what's your process for creating comic books? Do the artwork first, or the writing first, or do you just flip it around sometimes?
Well, I'm not an artist, so I don't draw. So I work in a model where I have a partner on every book. So I only write scripts. I don't draw any of my books. So I get to work with artists from all over the world, which is really cool. And the way it works is it starts with a script, and a script for a comic is a little bit like a teleplay, like a script for a TV show. A little different, but it's similar. So it'll start like, okay, page 1, panel 1, this is a wide shot of our hero coming up over the horizon. And then I kind of approach my scripts like letters to the artist, describing the story to them. And then they read the letter and use it as a guide to help them tell the story in a visual way. I don't have a very visual imagination, so I try to stay out of their way. I don't try to design the page for them. I try to hit the story beats and the character moments and the dialogue, and then I trust them to bring their gifts to the page visually.
And then a lot of the text is staying out of the picture because everything is already described.
Yeah.
Sort of say by artist, right?
Yeah, so it's funny. So like 75 to maybe higher than that percentage of the script that I write, you'll never see.
Right.
Yeah.
Only the dialogue makes it to the page. And even then, I try to cut as much dialogue as possible. If the artist has conveyed what we wanted to convey in dialogue, if they manage to convey it in pictures, then we cut the dialogue because you don't need the balloons to cover the art.
Sometimes, like a lot of especially young generation, when they try so hard to do something and they work, and then like part of this, most of this work sometimes is behind the scene, right? No one sees it, and then just like the little bits and pieces are like appreciated, let's say by community or by something, right? So, like, if big dreamers will face or did face that problem before, or that challenge before, what would you say? Like, how do you deal with that? Or if it bothers you at all or not?
Yeah.
If anybody else understands how much work goes into something?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess that would be outside my circle, right?
Yeah.
So, I think I have to think about my work as, I think the purpose of art is, and this is for me, and every artist has to define this for themselves. But for me, the purpose of art is to connect us to ourselves and to one another. So my goal when I'm telling a story is, and this is a cliche, but my goal is to tell a truth by telling a lie. So I'm trying to find something in this story, even if it's a crazy, imaginary story with superheroes shooting beams out of their hands and flying spaceships and talking to cats or, whatever it is. I want to find something in there that feels very human and very true and very real. And that's my goal. And if I find something like that in a story, something that speaks to me, then I trust it will speak to other people as well. And then whether anybody knows how much work went into it or anything like that, that's just ego.
That's true.
Yeah. And Kelly, I was wondering, where do you get your inspiration?
Oh my goodness. My friend Neil Gaiman says the universe tends to provide these things. But yeah, I think ideas are all around you. And I keep a list of what I call sweater threads. And there are things that are interesting to me that I kind of want to tug on a little bit and see if I can find a story there. A really good source of fiction ideas is something that you have really mixed feelings about, I think. So I look for things like that.
Yeah. And I've heard of this of this like phrase called writer's block. Can you explain to the big dreamers what that is and what do you do when you get it?
Well, we try. We say writer's block is for amateurs. So, if you have to do this for a living, and you want to do this for a living, you don't really have the luxury of
sitting and thinking.
Yeah.
Writer's
Well,
block.
yeah, sitting and thinking is part of your job, and it's a different thing to be stuck than being stuck is part of your job. And when you're stuck, you don't get to stop working. You might have to change canvases. You might have to, if you're stuck and you just can't figure it out and you've gone at it. And in fact, I'm there on a project right now. I spent 7 hours yesterday away from my computer, working in my notebook and trying to talk through a story that I just have not been able to make work yet. And at the end of the day, I had not gotten there, and it was a bummer. And I felt like, even though, I've been at this long enough to know intellectually that I didn't waste the day, that was important work, it still felt rotten. And then today I switched canvases. Today I went and worked on a different project because I know I'm kind of, my subconscious needs to stew on the other one.
And maybe give birth to ideas and inspirations, right?
Yeah. And taking a walk, is a surprisingly effective tool for me. There's also things that, I'll do, like, I don't know anything about tarot. I don't really believe in it I don't believe in future forecasting. No judgment to anyone who does, but that's not my thing. But I do have a small collection of tarot card decks that I will sometimes use just to shake up my thinking. Like if I'm trying to find something in a plot or a character, and I feel like I'm traveling the same road over and over again, and I think I need something new, I'll try to I'll get one of those decks out and cut to a card and see if something on the card gives me an idea, or try to relate it to the problem and see what it makes me think of. At my kids' school, they talk about using materials to help them think. So they'll pose a question, and it's the school that they go to is a Reggio Emilia school. And so they they'll have a question or something that they're working on, and they'll like, all right, go to some clay and try to work through their thinking with the clay, or make a collage. So I've not done that before. I've not used. Yeah, I think it was very cool. It's one of the nights that we were there, I thought, this is something I could use in my work. I haven't done it yet, but
I'm sure that spending time with kids and with your family, giving you a lot of breaks sometimes, and you switch subjects, as we say. And probably for our big dreamers out there, we would say it is okay to be stuck at something. If you find yourself thinking about one thing or another for a while, just switch the environment. If you've been stuck for a day at home, just take a walk, spend time with your loved ones, and maybe grab another book, read a book, a different book,
Yeah, absolutely.
And play with the animals, go out in the nature, play in the nature.
I love all of those ideas.
Yeah, and Kelly, I heard that you are married to another comic book creator. Do you guys sometimes ever pitch off ideas and work together?
We do. We're very different writers. Our styles and the sort of subjects that interest us are very different, but we have a very similar sense of humor, and we're big fans of each other's work. But very often we will, our desks are right next to each other, and very often we'll say, hey, you got a minute? I need to think through something. We call it talking to the duck, because often we don't really need the other person to say anything. We just need the practice of having to articulate the problem out loud. But
that's great advice. Eva, do you remember we did have writers who said that most of the times they come to an agreement, but it's important to talk about things and ideas, and if they can't come to an agreement, they talk to to third person, and they still come to an agreement.
Yeah.
So it's good to talk. It doesn't matter you work together or not, but it's good that you have, I call it 3 years. That someone who can listen to you, and listening is a great, great skill.
Yeah.
Without interruption, and once you just say it out loud, sometimes you'll find your own answers.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and Kelly, I think this is like a part to discuss feminism.
Okay.
And I think which is sadly not something that we have discussed previously on the podcast. I was wondering if you could share what it means to be a feminist.
I think different people have different definitions. For me, feminism means being concerned about equity for everyone, not just in. There's a movement currently that is often referred to as intersectional feminism, and that's kind of the practice that I identify with. So it is a belief that there are groups of people in our culture who are disadvantaged in terms of economics or opportunity or politics by things in their identity that are out of their control. So whether it be your gender or your race or your sexual orientation or your gender identity, and feminism is concerned with fighting for equality of opportunity and equity for everyone. So a lot of times there's a misunderstanding where people will think that feminism equates to wanting to take something away from men, or simply means ladies are great or whatever. It's not about wanting to take anything away from anybody. It's about wanting to labor for equality of opportunity and equity for everyone.
Yes, because girls and boys can get any profession they want, and a lot of times it's a misconception that comic book creators are also mostly men and they're written for boys, but you, as we know, I would say so passionate about this subject.
Yeah, and
a lot of times in your work you break these assumptions, so that's really cool thing.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to, you don't have to, there's nothing inherently masculine about storytelling of any genre or medium.
Right.
And it isn't about saying girls can like superheroes too, or anything like that. It's anybody can like whatever they want to like, and it doesn't mean anything about them. And there's nothing right. If you're into princesses, great, that's fantastic. The only thing I want is to for those princesses to have what we call agency, right? So we want them to be active and whole people and have wants and desires, but it doesn't have to be any one way to be worthy. It's just making all people feel like they are the protagonists in their own stories and not supporting characters in someone else's.
Yeah, and I was wondering, Kelly, if you have any recommendations for the girl big dreamers in our audience that would be interested in comics with female heroes.
Well, there are, if you wanted to read superheroes, I would recommend Ms. Marvel by G. Willow Wilson, which is a tremendous book. I might also humbly recommend my own run on Captain Marvel.
Of course.
Yeah.
And, but again, comics are they're a medium, not a genre. So there's also the Raina Telgemeier books, Sisters, Smile, drama. They're not superhero books, but they're really wonderful stories that you might enjoy. If you like detective fiction or detective stories, you might like the Goldie Vance books. He's a kid detective. If you like roller derby, you might like Roller Girl. If you like werewolves, you might like Moonstruck, or Lumberjanes or Nimona. There's a book called Phoebe and Her Unicorn that I know my daughter quite likes. She also loves, my daughter loves old Archie comics.
Interesting. Well, we will include all the links in our show notes.
Yeah.
The ones that you just mentioned, and maybe you'll send us links to many more, and we will be happy to include it. Big Dreamers, make sure to go on our blog, and Eva will tell right after our interview where you can get it.
Yeah, and Kelly, I know that you have already made many of your dreams a reality, but if you look at yourself today, what is your big dream for the future?
Oh my goodness. That's a good question. I think sometimes I get so overwhelmed and concerned with the day-to-day that I forget to keep in mind the big picture. But I do have some big goals. Someday I want to write a novel. I've been working in television development for the last couple of years, and I'd like to try show running. And then in a more general sense, I want to feel like I'm doing something to make the world a better place.
That's awesome. Kelly, it was such a great honor to have you on the podcast. And very last question, where can our audience find out more about you?
We have a website, my husband and I, Matt Fraction is his name, and there's a lot of information about our books and public appearances and all that kind of stuff up at milkfed.us. It's milkfed.us, and you can find me on Twitter at Kelly Sue, KELLYSUE.
That's very easy, and we will,
Yep.
of course, include everything in our show notes. And now, Big Dreamers, thank you so much for listening.
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
To discover new things, discover new books, and even if you maybe read fiction books before, only fiction books or maybe stories, and it's maybe time to switch and discover comic books and and discover different comic books. They're interesting and they are like a movie, like you're watching a movie, and the pictures are very cool. Artists work, as you can see, a lot on what writers describe. So pay attention to details, and remember that one day, if you have a dream about being a comic book writer, you can. As you can see that Kelly became very, very well-known writer, and her husband is a comic book writer. So it is possible. If it is your dream, you can achieve it. Take action, right, Eva?
Yep.
Thank you, Kelly, so much. It was
Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
That was such a fascinating interview, and I want to thank Kelly for sharing so many valuable tips about her process for creating comic books and what she does when she gets stuck, which I know is something all creators struggle with. Be sure to check out our show notes at dreambigpodcast.com/86 for links to Kelly's website and everything else we discussed in the episode. When you go to the show notes, you'll see a place to sign up for our insider newsletter where we'll send exclusive content, including a free audio that I made on my top 10 tips for making and keeping great friends. This audio is only available for those who subscribe, and I know this will really help you, so please be sure to have your parents join the newsletter to get it. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Eva Cartman reminding you that you have unlimited potential. Your dreams are not optional, you need to make them essential. So take massive action to turn those big dreams into reality. Live with passion, the way life is meant to be. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!